Welcome to the session on Tools for Sustainability Performance Management and Reporting. As you all know, sustainability requires us to pay attention to those areas in finance, operations, human resource management, customer management, the areas that we haven't been paying attention to. Some new areas sustainability requires us to pay attention to. If I need to pay attention to, I need to manage all my stakeholders. I require information. I need to have a tool to manage all that new information. Businesses normally have been managing information by deploying IT tools. So, to manage sustainability performance and then reporting, we require supplementation of IT tools or extension of these IT tools. The panel here have spent many years in developing such tools or deploying such tools. I'm sure they are going to add value to the whole issues that are put before the panel, and all of you will be able to gain from the deliberations. I invite all of you to join and enjoy the deliberations.
Hello, welcome to everybody after this lunch session, for this session. And I also welcome all my fellow panelists to this dais. They bring in a variety of experience in the tool space as well as the practice space of sustainability. And over the next hour or so, we'll try and discuss with them and to find out, the challenges that we have heard, on sustainability over the last 2 days, 2.5 days. How some of these challenges can possibly be, overcome, if not surmounted in full measure, at least partly or partially, and how can tools, make us take those baby steps towards sustainability if you have not at all started on a journey, and if you have all started on a journey, how can tools come in and deliver to us a framework, in which we can measure, monitor, analyze, and better our performance. I think with this as the background, we'll start looking at, what the tools can deliver, what are the tools, what is the landscape right now, and the theme that we'll keep for the day is to see that how, if you're using it, can we do something better? If you're not using it, do we have a case for bringing them in? Can they really deliver? And I think with that as the objective in the background, we'll start the session. With your permission, if I can start with Sunil first. Sunil, if you look at the organizational landscape in IT, and we have known that an IT has been able to deliver so-called smarter organizations. So our modern organizations, we say, are very smart when it comes to, and that smartness has been delivered by IT. And the definition of smartness, if I've understood it correct, meant that you do more with less amount of resources. So whatever resources I was using earlier to deliver a particular output, I do more of it, I do it faster. Now that kind of a paradigm, is it going to be enough to make our organizations responsible as well? Because if I've understood the theme of sustainability, it is not to remain smart if you're smart, to also bring in an element of responsibility. And smart, as we understand today, may not directly equate to responsibility. Sunil, what's your take on that?
See, the point which Anupam has raised about how effective these IT tools in terms of, at least to a certain extent, take care of the challenges or other issues which we discussed about the last 2.5 days. But coming back to that point, see, if you look at as a sustainability domain, as a sustainability professional in the field for last about a decade, as you have seen in the earlier presentation, where we talk about starting with Excel sheets and compiling it and all. Yes, there are real problems when you actually start understanding issues. especially in an organization like mine, where ITC, which is a conglomerate of various types of products which manufacture, starting from manufacturing sector as well as your service sector, various fields which we are in. The understanding of certain aspects in a particular business is not the same as that of another business. So it's a huge task in front of you. How do you bring everybody at par, at the same level, so that your problems to great extent get sorted out? Even certain definitions to bring at par with various business, we had tremendous problems in the initial stage. And the IT tool, we initially, when we started about 10 years back, we started with all sorts of, as every organization do it, like sending documents through mails and then compile it, put it together and all those things. From there onwards, we have moved to another simple reporting tools where people have been given access. So the major problems which at each stage which we identify, how this data is credible which you come to me, the information which you come to you. That is a major challenge which has been seen. See, today's organization, as you know very well, the churning of employees are quite huge in the organization. So you have to be always up to mark in terms of training these people to the level what you require to understand. That is one. Second thing is, how do you really effective in picking up the right information? Now, you also have to understand, when you're talking about a sustainability reporting tool, I'm not talking about just a reporting tool. I just talking one step ahead. It should be more of a sustainability performance management tool. So if it is a reporting tool, the focus which you would get in the management is going to be very, very limited. Okay, you just give it to a person, sustainability officer or an EHS manager. Okay, once a year he will compile and put it. But if the tool can actually give you the right information to management to take a decision, there the sustainability front which will come to the right platform. That is how we moved from the Excel based and other systems to a enterprise sort of a reporting tool, where the tool has got the facility even for pooling the information which is already available. Many times it's what happens when you talk about any of these measures which we talk about, on a material utilization or energy use or water use, it's all available in the organization at some or other form. Okay, and somebody else, especially finance management system in most of the organization, it's very strong. It gets picked up. May not be the right metrics which you wanted. It's available in that format. So the solution which you would have has to have the capability to pick up or integrate with the existing ERPs. Then your problem is further sorted out. Otherwise, again, you would end up two sorts of data which at various levels. One more point which I want to bring it is how these tools are going to be useful in terms of traceability and auditability. Okay, when you are actually going for a public disclosure, or leave aside the public disclosure, even for an internal decision making, you cannot make a decision which is based on the data which you are not sure about. So the tool has to give where this data gets generated, how it gets generated, who is responsible, at various stages how it gets converted into the different derived indicators which you require. So these are some of the 2-3 points which I want to bring it up. Maybe I'll elaborate as and when we move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Sunil. I think you touched upon some very important points, and you mentioned a few things, which is actually is in the environment of the tool, and you have touched upon things like training, right information, etc. And you have also brought out the fact that when you are thinking about tools, it's not only the reporting tool that you need to think about. In fact, it's the end of the pipeline if you're thinking about reporting tools alone. It's the other things that you do with the IT tools in order to understand the organization, analyze the organization, make yourself understand the process better. I think that was very useful, for some very useful points you added to the discussion. If I can turn to you, Vishwanath, and you have been working with SAP, and you have a quite well-known framework which has sort of worked with many other domains, and also I understand on sustainability domain you have tools you were mentioning before the discussion. I wanted to understand from a corporate management perspective. See, if I'm a corporation and I have installed within my system accounting systems, IT-driven, state-of-the-art, and they are delivering to me results day in and day out for months and years. And I have now newly recognized sustainability as a very important element within my domain, and I suddenly become very responsible and responsive, and I want to take that jump. Is it a given that I have my accounting systems and other systems, and hence I have a discipline necessary to work with those systems? Is it then a given that all those things which I have, that will smoothly take me to the sustainability domain, or does this domain per se have something which is some features which perhaps sets it apart, and as a result it's necessary to step back, take a look, regroup, and then approach the problem? What's your take on that?
Thanks a lot, Anupam. I just want to take a step back there. I think initially you were mentioning the first point I'd like to talk about is we don't need to separate being smart and being responsible. I don't think they are mutually exclusive. I think being responsible is the smart thing to do, and that is why the whole concept of environment, health, and safety is being driven by what we call the triple bottom line, which has economics, environment, and the environmental triple bottom line. Why being responsible is the smart thing to do, and one very important thing that you touched upon also on why is sustainability and enterprise business process, are they two exclusive things? Again, the answer to that question is no. The whole objective of bringing sustainability into the core of your business operations is that at each step of your business operations, is what you're doing responsible, is what you're doing sustainable. Just give you an example. Let's say I'm a pharmaceutical organization or a chemical organization, for example. Today, if I have to make a choice of ingredients that I'm using in my pharmaceutical product, am I making the right choice of ingredients? It makes simple business sense. The reason is, as a pharmaceutical organization, let's say I'm operating across different geographies. It's very difficult for me to keep track of regulations in each of these geographies, understand, am I compliant to these regulations? Are the ingredients that I'm using compliant to these regulations? So to even conceive of doing that task manually is very difficult. And IT is not something that is an add-on. IT is something that is supposed to drive sustainable business practices. So today, if I make a choice of ingredient, IT has the ability to tell me whether that ingredient can be used in that particular geography. If it's the right ingredient, should I use it, not use it? Is there a regulatory implication on using that ingredient in my particular product? So that is in the product development life cycle itself. There are so many tasks that each of our product development folks do, which require us to ensure that there is a sustainability angle to the processes that we drive. In India, what we've noticed with a lot of customers in India also is that, let's accept the fact that in India nobody does anything till it becomes regulation, right? So, and I think all our regulatory frameworks, especially the National Action Plan on Climate Change that the Government of India is working on, I think they are all steps in the right direction in ensuring that customers adopt sustainable business practices, and in being responsible, they are smart. I'll just give you an example of energy management. So typically, I've noticed in a lot of plants, for example, you have these people, dedicated people, safety managers, or a general production supervisor, for example, who would typically walk around the plant, take readings on the energy consumption at each of the equipments, identify, come back, tell you, here's my energy consumption, and here's the cost associated with that energy consumption. All this is in retrospect. You have already consumed the energy, you have made that product, and you are going back and reporting your energy consumption. Like Mr. Sunil also rightly pointed out, there is no value in analyzing data in retrospect. you should have a mechanism to bring that data in real time so that you are able to take corrective action when it's necessary. Right? There was a point on information at the right time, at the right place, and in the right hands. That's very, very critical. So with IT, you can actually build a mechanism where, let's say, all the digital energy meters on your shop floor are integrated, and someone sitting who's a plant manager can actually view energy consumption in real time across his plants. So he knows that you can, let's say, build a maintenance strategy out of it. Today, if you find that over the last 5 months an equipment on your shop floor is consuming consistently high energy, you as an organization will need to take a decision on whether you need to repair that equipment, replace that equipment, because you know what the costs involved are of energy consumption. And if you go and tell any CFO that, I have a mechanism to, increase by even 1 percentage point an item on your P&L that comprises of 20% of your operating costs, anybody would want to do it. And in the process of making that economic decision, you are also making your operations sustainable. So there are a lot of different areas where IT can, bring a lot of value to building sustainability into your enterprise business process. So I think we shouldn't treat these as two exclusive items.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Vishwanath. I think, let me correct myself. Let me rather, clarify myself. When I said smart, it meant smart in double quotes. I do believe that smart and responsible are the smartness without responsibility is no smartness at all. But we hear about all these smart technologies, and if we really accept that definition of smartness, then we would all have been in the ultimate state of responsibility by now. But we are not. So which means your smart tablets, smart devices, smart integrated systems have an element of further smartness to add on to it. I take your point. I appreciate your point on that. And you correctly said that sustainability is not something which is alien from the processes that you have already installed in your in your organization. Every function would have an element of sustainability in that. A question that comes to my mind is when we have looked at the traditional systems, IT systems, and if I understand them correctly, they have been internally focused. Their outward focus has been only to the extent of reporting requirements or compliance requirements that has been set. So which means the parameters that you were looking at when you were looking at your operation were basically modeled by data which you would pretty much get internally, directly, or it would come in through the interactions that happen through the finance route or the monetary route. We all know about externalities, and sustainability is about internalizing your externalities. If you take that aspect, Femke, and if I may ask you, internalizing those externalities with the help of IT tools, is that a given, or is there a major challenge? If it's a challenge, is it surmountable, even if it's in small measure?
Some companies start on the sustainability track very much from an external perspective, from a marketing perspective. And others are seeing it from a cost-saving perspective, so that's more internal. And if you combine those efforts, and you could do that with sustainability tools, some sustainability IT tools, you, for example, can see that if I take an example of a property owner who owns land, who sets up property there, for example, hotels, offices for companies, also housing, that the information that they collect from their building management system, from what is happening in the utility sphere, collecting that data, they can use that for their own good in the way of seeing where their cost is the highest, where they probably have to take measures to reduce it. But they can also give that data as an opportunity to the people who are renting the space, in order to show them, okay, if you do this, or if you reduce here, or if you implement this, you can actually reduce yourself. On top of that, for example, these offices could use that to report back to their headquarters about the carbon footprinting of these locations in order to build a better sustainability report. Another usage of this, which you can use externally, is if you want to educate people that are coming to your premises, or if you want to sell your efforts that you do in this sphere. What you can, for example, see that a project that we've done at the large science park, whereby visitors that come there can actually see with the data that the systems collect what is happening, but not only seeing, okay, this is a carbon footprint, but actually having a meaningful visual with that, so they can actually learn from that and maybe take that home and work with that. So I think with the possibilities of IT tools, you can use it for both internally and externally.
Thanks a lot, Femke, for your points. I think now that we have a fair view of what that landscape possibly looks like, and we pretty much sort of have said that it is possible to take a little bit of a movement to the sustainability. And Femke, as you said, that some of these movements have already happened with IT tools. If I can turn to Sunil and ask a question. You have been in industry for a long time, and you have seen these systems mature to whatever extent that it has matured. If you had to advise another organization, a mid-sized organization, who with limited capabilities is looking at making investment into these IT systems, IT tools, especially with a focus on sustainability, and if you did not have the choice of starting with everything, which function within the organization would you think? And because Vishwanathan told us that sustainability is an element which has to be looked at every function, which function would you start with? Would you advise that where sustainability should be sort of deployed, or sustainability tool should be deployed or rolled out? The reason I ask this question is basically because if you look at the history of IT, I think, in the other spaces where it has been successful, it's pretty much where it had been first initiated that determined the success. And one of the earlier successes of IT systems is the accounting systems. The reason that it succeeded in those areas is basically it had a well laid out steps to accomplishing what it accomplishes. The boundary was pretty well defined, and so that's how it got started, and it took off. Perhaps it enabled IT tools to gather the critical mass that was required to gain scalability, and then hence further ability to invest and gain returns and repump the whole thing into the process. So Sunil.
Actually, it's a very, very difficult question to give a one-stop solution for this. The reason being, the organizations are, a varied level of management systems in place. How each organization is actually operating it out, starting from your small and medium enterprises to a large corporations, is a huge variation. But the point which he has made, IT tools have become very successful in the accounting because everything starts and ends there, in any organization. Because what is the purpose of an organization? It's basically value creation. And the value creation, when it comes, then you actually put in some metrics. Eventually, at the end of the year, you are giving a balance sheet to, to tell your shareholders and stakeholders where you stand. So from that perspective, we are broadening the spectrum now. From economic or financial performance, you are going into the areas of environment and social and all those areas. So definitely the first and foremost key stakeholder who has to be brought in your side is actually going to be the accounting people or finance people in the system. Okay, they should actually start understanding, and they should start appreciating, okay, this is a tool which is going to be useful in various aspects. Why it is not giving importance today, I will tell you. Today energy is getting importance because of two basic reasons. One is the cost of energy is continuously going on increasing. It's going to have too much pressure on industries to work on that. Also availability. And there are lots of other pressures and regulatory requirements also going to come up. So everyone's focus is actually going to come on that. But if you look at the other major environmental parameters like water or any other things, it is not, because water has not been to the value which is actually should have been. It's not known to even the finance people. They don't really look at that. It always getting a major fight with the accounts and finance people to talk about water also should be monitored the way in which it has to be monitored. Unless you are in a particular business where water intensity is very high and you are in an area where water becomes issue. So sustainability is such a varied domain. Each and every parameters has got its own significance, its own importance. The way in which you operate, the country in which you operate, there are a lot of context, regional context which need to be brought in. So from that angle, it becomes very difficult unless the senior management and the finance and accounts people to be brought within your side to take these tools forward. Because the reason being, I tell you, the other things, other various aspects, you don't really need a an IT solution to have many of your social related parameters to be picked up. Wherever people say it's an investment, if you're doing a social investment, if you're doing a CSR activity, where cost is there, automatically finance guy is picking up. You don't require to have a separate tool for that. But the moment you have a system, you want to know how are you monitoring the performance in terms of child labor being controlled in an organization or human rights violation being controlled, it really doesn't require to have a tool. When it comes to the environment side, again, so that, as I already mentioned, if in your overall costing, suppose energy's cost is something around 10 to 20% it comes, definitely your accounts people will focus on that. There is no need. Water may be 0.1%, 2%, okay, may get to the last. Material, if material consumption and material cost is really an important aspect, they definitely bring into that. That is why ERP implementation in organization, even in my own organization, at various businesses, I have seen the level at which they start actually implementing. What module to be picked up at what stage? Which module to be implemented first and start implementing. So this is actually the fact of life. So in that aspect, if you really want to bring in, first of all, the organization has got a vision in this field. They consider the sustainability is actually the one which they believe and they start developing in that. From that, if you have the support from the top management, naturally things will fall in place. So it's very difficult to actually give you an answer which function or which department actually should drive this performance, depending on how each organization set up their system. It goes on. I mean, in ITC, my department, corporate EHS department, is the one which drives. But in ITC, if you look at, there is no chief sustainability officer per se, because our chairman believes that it is not one chief sustainability officer or somebody's job. There is a part which EHS have to play, there is a part secretarial has to play, there is a part the product development team has to play, there is a part which corporate social investment team has to play. So everybody has collectively, when you do it, it actually takes place. So that is why it's actually a very, very difficult proposition to say that who should be actually tapped in terms of take it forward.
All right, so there we have, while we have challenge in sustainability in the domain per se, even if you decide to do, even if you decide to act, there are some challenges to be overcome. And which means that you have to all put the thinking cap on and actually start looking at things in a very innovative way. I think looking at your own organization's perspective where you can have the maximum buy-in. And talking about buy-in, I think what we know generally is that wherever value, systems go in wherever there's systems go in and sit down where value can be demonstrated. So value demonstration is always, I think in all walks of economic activity, a major area and a major driver. So now then, Vishwanathan, if I can turn to you and ask, what is happening? How are organizations demonstrating value? I mean, to the most uninitiated in sustainability, in your finance department, if you have to go and get an approval of a finance budget for a sustainability system, how do you do that? What value, do you have some examples? And instead of being vague at the top level, can it be brought down to something, if not very quantitative, is a qualitatively quantitative. I mean, you know what I mean? You know, sometimes when we cannot actually put in numbers, I learned while I was getting, you know, I was evaluating HR-wise one of my departments, and I was asked to put some value on a skill set, and I was arguing from a scientific and engineering principle, you know, you cannot put a value to it. How do you quantify? Then I came with that magic formula, which I always use: when you are at a loss, divide the scale 0 to 5, and then you are, you know, pseudo quantitative, and it works. So, leaving that aside, what kind of examples of, you know, value demonstration do you have? And I think that could be very useful for organizations looking at, you know, selling it through first within their system.
Sure. Yeah, Anupam, I think that's a very, very interesting point that you've made. For anyone who's embarking on the sustainability journey, be it IT or, you know, be it even embedding those practices into your organization, the very, very critical thing is to build that business case for sustainability. Typically, we've seen organizations who build a business case for sustainability around 3 major areas. One is risk, the second thing is cost, and the third thing is growth. How you classify this? For example, let me take the example of a mining company or an oil and gas company who's got oil rigs, for example. Typically, the risks associated with such businesses is very high. So why would I do sustainability? The first thing I would do is, you know, probably do an incident management system, understand what my lost time injury is, ensure occupational health for people who are working at the rigs, open cast mines, for example. So depending on which kind of industry you belong to, you can choose one of these 3 areas: risk, cost, or innovation, or growth, innovation and growth, as one of the primary drivers for how to, you know, embark on that sustainability journey. If I take the example, so typically in manufacturing setups, you will see, you know, people want to, you walk into any shop right now, you will see time since the last accident, how many accidents have you had in the last 3 years. Those are things that are normally measured in organizations. And the value of bringing IT systems into such a setup is very, very high. Typically in organizations which have, let's say, geographically dispersed plants, lot of plants in their organization, you want to benchmark each of those plants against each other, replicate best practices from one plant to another plant so that you can reduce lost time injury. These are notional costs. An organizational will bear costs in terms of penalties due to EHS violations typically, or cost associated with that lost time injury. Let's say there is a fire in a plant. It is a huge cost to an organization. So here you are putting IT systems in place to obviate that risk, to, you know, ensure that, you know, you don't incur that cost as an organization. But if you look at service organizations, for example, where typically operational risk may not be too high, for them it's more about brand reputation, innovation, growth. Customers today, irrespective of which you know, background they come from, the awareness about sustainability is increasing in the customer landscape. So when you go to a person, you are demanding sustainable products. So I'll give you an example. I was recently speaking to the Chief Sustainability Officer of Yes Bank, for example. They were very interested. They've created a fund which it's very responsible banking. I mean, creating a fund which is used by, let's say, immigrant laborers. You give them loans at low interest rates, for example. It's something very simple, something any organization can adopt, for example, but it is responsible banking. So there you are looking at innovation, growth, market share capturing, brand building, reputation building. So typically service organizations tend to take that route, where the operational risks or costs involved in EHS violations may not be too high. From SAP is a service organization, and typically we also have a 2-pronged strategy to sustainability, taking sustainability to the market. We of course have tools which help organizations do sustainability reporting, do environment, health and safety, compliance management, permits, lot of things that you can manage with IT. But the second strategy we have is what is known as the exemplar strategy. We don't talk, we don't preach, we as an organization practice. So if you go, we have a Chief Sustainability Officer, we have a huge governance structure which is created around sustainability management inside SAP as an organization. For example, we have a portal which is called 2Go. It's a carpooling portal. Anybody walks in, logs into that portal, mentions where he is from and what the distance of that place is from his office. The tool will throw up all those people who stay close by to you, identify who you can carpool with to office to reduce your carbon footprint. Carbon footprint, paper consumption, all of these are managed by user in the organization. And we have set ourselves very, very aggressive goals to reduce paper consumption, carbon, energy usage, etc. across the organization. And each of these are management-driven objectives. So when the management says, here's what the objective is for our organization as a whole, there is a mechanism by which it gets percolated down to each of the regions, each of the market units, each of the offices, and thereby to each of the individuals. Now, you wouldn't be able to put a mechanism like this in place unless you had IT. So depending on which type of industry or organization you come from and what your organizational priorities are, you can easily build a business case for why you want to adopt sustainability into your business practices. And hence, CFOs or whoever the decision makers are in the organization with this business case will be convinced on why you need to take that plunge.
Okay. All right. While I understand what you've said, but to me it is hinting at that it still needs a little bit of an element of faith or conviction to find that pocket of faith or conviction within the organization. And if you are lucky enough to find that, and if you appeal to that, maybe that makes your case easier. Right. If I can now turn to Femke, and I understand you work with Matrix, and you have you deal with Matrix, and you have tools around that, and you have also been around. Your organization has been around with with tools in the sustainability space, in an area of the sustainability space, which is the carbon footprinting, etc. What are the challenges that you have seen, and how you have overcome them, and have helped overcome them with the tool that you have? And is there any lesson that you can take from that, and which others can use when they're looking at sustainability, not in that climate change domain alone, in the larger sustainability space?
Yeah, thank you. That's we've started in this working in this field about 3 years ago, coming from more a supply chain angle, where of course the footprint is very large, and we've encountered challenges in convincing companies to go for tools rather than setting up their standards on paper and calculating it in Excel sheets. What I've learned so far with companies that did start working in Excel sheets, that the challenge really comes mostly after the first person that picks up on the sustainability metrics leaves or goes to do something else or works for the competitor. Then an Excel sheet that shows numbers doesn't actually mean something for the person that comes after that. And what you can actually see that as well if you go to a random company's GRI report, that you actually see a lot of claims in there which basically mean, sorry, we don't know how we calculated this last time, but we try again, we start again this year. So we actually have the biggest success, if I may say so, with companies that tried it once on Excel and then failed. And sometimes, I mean, we of course try to convince them before that happens, but that is really hard. Even, I mean, sometimes I go to companies that are actually very, very large, and I know them that they have a very strong sustainability program in place. They're known around the world for having a very green strategy. But then when you actually go to that company and look at the procedures that they have in place, you see that a lot is still very, very manual. So you see that there are definitely challenges around that. In order to convince them, I think being able to explain that, and also taking the sustainability person that it really is usually someone that's very passionate about its work and very knowledgeable about it, convincing that person that it's not his or her task to type in numbers the whole day, but it should use its skills to be strategic about where the company would be going to. So if you have someone that is doing the typing in of the numbers, usually from a marketing communication perspective, and being able to translate what that person is doing and the value that actually he or she brings to the organization to the board level, that is, I think, very important to be able to see what those measurements mean and what the company actually benefits from it from a marketing perspective. I think that translation to what the board level is talking about and what you asked before also about financial regulation, those people were able to talk to the CEO and of course with the CFO there, and that is still challenging for people from a marketing or PR department where the sustainability usually is. I think that's just a couple of challenges that we face.
Thanks. Femke mentioned about, yeah.
I just want to add what, if you permit, what Vishwanath was talking about. I tend to agree with him because, see, it depends on the organization's values and the vision the organization has got. Now, if an organization, like I can give from a perspective of mine, because when ITC, when we started actually looking at these aspects in a very, very concrete manner in one box, I mean, we were having at that stage as a framework of GRI, Global Reporting Initiative. So we found that even though we are doing many things in the sustainability framework, we were seeing this as one of the tools which can be used to put it together. So in that process, we have come across very many challenges, and when way back people are not talking about buildings have to be energy efficient, you need to look at LEED certification. We're the first one actually we ventured in. We have really had lots of discussion. At that point of time, a LEED certified or a building which has to comply with that has been costing something around 15–20%. So it's not an easy task to actually convince the board to actually take a decision. But it's basically the vision, which a long-term vision, which the management looking into that. So that from that process onwards, we thought that okay, this is a process or this is a tool which actually has to disseminate to others. That's how one of our businesses, ITC at Infotech business, actually picked up these learnings and then convert into an effective tools. We have a tool which are looking into sustainability reporting and performance management. So that is based on what we have actually, gone the obstacles during our reporting stages, how did we learn each of those, and how management views these things. So how good that we can actually improvise in the tool so that it will be useful for even other organization which should be coming into that. They had a stall also outside. Those who want, they can actually have a visit and look into that. So that's a point which I want to again and again drive. Tools have to be helpful for the management. Management should get convinced, whether it's on sustainability front or even any other aspects.
Femke mentioned about an interesting thing called, if I may paraphrase it as tried and failed. Tried and failed is a good reason to get in with newer systems in order to avoid such reputations in future. So which means, the potential of failure and the threat of that, if that is looming overhead, that perhaps is a good reason to step back and look at, do we need to do anything different? And if that's the case, in the current Indian scenario, you have new regulations that have come in, and I'm particularly reminded of the energy efficiency regulation that has come in. So can these regulations which have just now come around, from your understanding of, Sunil particularly, of your knowledge about how operations run and how they have been performing and functioning, do you think these could help as boosters to move into the sustainability front? And that's the time where internal champions within the organization of the sustainability cause should latch on and try to advance the case for doing better, and hence the tools?
I would answer this both yes and no. Okay. Most of the organization, how do they see it? For example, I would take the case again, come back to my own organization. See, it is not really mandatory when we started actually bringing up the concept of all our hotels have to be LEED certified. Now it's actually bringing up, it's giving lots of weightage in the organization. So definitely if an organization has got a vision and the management see it as an opportunity, definitely it is going to catch up. So you would definitely get the first mover advantage. And you should also be able to influence your stakeholders, even including government to a certain extent, that this is an area which you need to look at. For example, you talked about all this, the BE certification on energy, efficient appliances and all. So that's an area which was well known that it is bound to happen in India. I can talk from a perspective of there is similar mechanism which is there called a PAT scheme, perform, achieve and trade mechanism. Okay, there are around 7-8 sectors of industrial sectors, they have to comply with that. Basically, again, bringing them energy efficiency in that particular sector.
I was actually referring to PAT only because the threat that is there if you don't comply.
Correct. So there the threat has actually, that has actually become an opportunity for us, one of our factories now, because we were actually pursuing the energy efficiency measures in all our factories, which is a requirement which we stipulate from corporate, and it gets audited and identify the opportunities and take measures. Because of which we are in such a position that we would be able to trade that benefits which we've already followed last about 3 to 4 years. So for which you have to have a forward looking approach in terms of, okay, when we started this maybe 5 years or 10 years back, our thinking was not even when CDM was there, our thinking was energy efficiency I'm going to give me benefit in terms of energy cost. Today ITC's total energy, 90% of my energy is actually coming from one business, which is a paper and pulp industry business. So everyone's focus, that's why I was talking earlier also on materiality and all these things. Everyone's focus has gone into that. That is actually getting paid off today. Might have taken some 3 or 5 years time frame. But definitely it has got a drive in that. So in that whole process, when you are driving it, all these tools in terms of how, because especially Vishwanath also mentioned about energy, when you are capturing energy at various stages, it's very important that how do you really collate? How do you really bring it at the same platform? How do you really report? That's all very important. So that is how you get the benefit when you are actually start looking at from a forward looking point.
Thank you. Okay, with that I move on to one. I think we are running short of time. Perhaps I would want to move to one last point, perhaps here. Vishwanath, what are the nature of these tools that we are talking about? 2-3 points of observation here. If you look at, there are 16, 17 tools that are who's available, about whom you can learn from the public domain. And if I were to be one who would want to go ahead with a particular tool, and the first thing seems to be that they talk about reporting. And let us say for this discussion's sake, we look at the reporting aspect. All of them are GRI certified. So if I were to make a choice of a tool, I would need a differentiator. Think of it from the problem of decision maker within the organization. First off, with regards to IT, first is he needs to make a decision as to whether to bring in this tool which will help his sustainability cause, whose value depends more on perception perhaps with the current mindset. And then he has added to that a challenge that he needs to differentiate from the plethora of tools that exist. Add to it that there is already an IT investment already in place, and he doesn't want to take up significant capital investment on top of that. Against this backdrop, what are the basic different kinds of opportunities that are available, and are there enough options in the market today to suit all different kinds of needs? By this, what I mean is, if I want to have an add-on tool, can I selectively look at a certain areas? I don't want to look at those 78 or 79 indicators. I can pick and choose a few indicators, and I decide I want to approach on a prototype basis, on a pilot basis. I look at a few areas. I will pick them up. I will map them. I'll see how am I performing. I'll put my internal goals. I'll benchmark, and then I'll see how I do, and I'll move along. So, your thoughts on that?
Anupam, I think again you've made a very interesting point there. With any reporting or analytics tool or layer, the primary philosophy with which this tool works is garbage in, garbage out. Unless you have background data which can actually give you meaningful information, no matter what tool it is, whether it's GRI certified, whether it's certified by you or certified by me, it doesn't make any difference. Because per se, any analytics package or any business intelligence package, lot of the things that are available in a business intelligence package are more or less similar, right? But the most important thing is in terms of features, right? In terms of adoptability. Anyone who wants to embark on the journey of sustainability today probably will say, let me do something that, let me do an intelligence package which can give me a GRI report, which is out of the box from that package. In that sort of a situation, you need to have a tool which is which is something that can be given to users. They can start working on. First thing is standardization. So typically, if you want to report on the GRI indicators, right? Let's assume, like you said, that you don't want to report on all of them. You have data on, let's say, only 15 of the 75 indicators.
What I wanted to mention to clarify, I want to analyze on these indicators. Let's leave reporting aside.
Correct.
For the time.
No, so when I say reporting, I mean reporting and analytics as a layer, right? So reporting is a fallout. You have the information available. The information is primarily used only to analyze. You can always determine the frequency at which you report. In fact, it could be an automatic trigger. For example, the tools that are available from SAP, you can actually say, I want a report on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parameters in my inbox every 15 days. Right? There's no intervention there per se. You are using the reporting and analytics layer to only analyze your performance, right? So there you can always identify those key indicators on the basis of which you want to measure your performance. Key thing there is standardization. What an analytics and intelligence layer can do to an organization is will help standardize collection of information. Even today, typically if I go to an organization who don't have IT tools for sustainability per se, when they are collecting information from different parts of the organization to measure their performance, you will find a different format for every plant, every facility of that organization. What putting such a package will do is bring discipline into the organization. It will ensure that the information, the forms, whatever the mechanism is which through you're collecting information, all that information is available in a standard format. That's the first thing it will do. But of course, the real value of any analytics package, like I said, especially around sustainability, lies in the fact that there should be a background package which will give you information where the sanctity of data is very high. So for example, in SAP parlance, if you have an enterprise resource planning solution, an ERP, SAP ERP in place, and if you have the environment, health and safety module of SAP also available with you, you can associate all the different enterprise business processes with the necessary sustainability parameters in the same package, which means the sanctity of data becomes very, very high. So like I said, any reporting analytics package is garbage in, garbage out. So what you need to control is the sanctity of data from where that reporting or analytics actually happens. So which is why it is, to start on a journey to bring organizational discipline in, yes, it is, if you want to take those baby steps, it is important that if GRI is your goal right now, you can start with a reporting and analytics package, put those forms together and collect information. But the most critical piece is ensuring data sanctity, which will happen when you embed sustainability into your enterprise process.
Okay, thanks. So if I've understood you right, what you're saying is that the options do exist for all flavors of the requirements that are there. You need to really define what you want, number one. Number two, you need to plan your process around the IT tools, and that's so important. That's what you meant when you said garbage in, garbage out. So for every flavor of the requirement, there is some one or the other IT tool. And it is this IT tool, and you can bring in these IT tools, embrace them, and use them to further your journey down the sustainability route. Femke, if I may ask you, and I was talking to you before the session, and you have a technology background as well as policy background and a sustainability background. If you can put your technology hat, and if you can give us a sense of the direction, in which improvements are happening or likely to happen in these tools. From a user perspective, where are we in terms of the capabilities of these tools? And very briefly, if you can mention, what are the next few steps that we perhaps are headed towards?
From what I've seen in the last couple of years in the sustainability IT sphere, I believe that companies slowly move into offering better services to their customers, and then I mean in a business-to-business relationship, which means that if we're looking at a very specific example, for example, in the supply chain, where you have third-party logistics providers who have been offering services around their logistics for many years, but especially now because there is basically there's no way of competing over the price of a container anymore. You have to do more than that. So there we see that those companies that are supplying with services or products towards multinationals, towards companies all around the world, are actually offering these sustainability answers, these sustainability metrics to their customers. I think that is something that is definitely growing. So instead of a multinational asking for that data, it's actually coming from the other direction now, which means that those companies in the supply chain have to have better tools in order to do that. And I think the step after that, so this is already happening now, but the step after that, I believe, would be that these companies actually have so much data themselves, which they don't use at this moment. So you can, for example, look at a shipping portal. They have data about all the ships that all the companies that book ships throughout their portal, and these can be huge numbers. So they know which ship arrives on time, what type of ship has been used. They can even look into data about fuel usage, about which type of fuel. So this data is there, but at the moment, no one does anything with that. And I think that is something that will definitely grow in the future. So actually companies can make more informed decisions. So at the moment it's really hard for a company that doesn't have any assets themselves to make decisions to influence the companies that they buy from. And that will definitely change in the future.
Thank you. I think we have covered some important aspects of tools, and tools particularly in sustainability performance management. One of the other important things about these IT tools I'd like to mention is that, the cost of ownership of these tools, even if they're larger ones, have significantly come down over the last few years, especially because of the different models that they have adopted. You do not really have to own the full tool, and you, for example, you can have web-based system. You can pretty much use it as a service, and there are so many different other ways. So I think cost may not be the barrier in adopting those tools. So the tools exist. What I think is important, and which I think echoed through the discussion that we have had, is the tools do exist. But more important than that is you need to be able to decide what you want to do. You have to look within your organization and develop around it the discipline that is necessary in order for these tools to deliver to you what it should deliver. I'll give you an example. Just a couple of days back, we work with a number of industry units, and it's a thermal power plant. You would think a thermal power plant, the only two things that they would look at is the power they generate and the amount of coal they used. And this is something which they should know by their fingertips. Very interesting. They would have all their large IT systems in place, but they don't have one coal data. They have multiple coal data. So which means a system is in place, but it's not working the way it should. In the last session, I heard speakers saying that SME segment doesn't have systems. There is another segment perhaps where IT tools exist, but still system exists, so-called system exists, but the systems are not performing or delivering. I think the whole understanding of sustainability that we have developed through the days with the knowledge of the various facets of it that we have acquired, if we take them back, sync them in, and then get into our organization looking at our typicalities and try to roll that out, I think we'll have a good deployment of sustainability, tools and practices, whatever they are necessary to build that deployment, I think will automatically come around. So I think with that thought, we'll leave the floor open to questions, if there are any.
Yeah, very well said, Mr. Sunil, about water will be future war will be on water, and it is a most material for all businesses will be water. But taking aspect how our sustainability reporting currently is currently only limited to reporting of the financial year. It is not spread where the company is moving in future, next 5 years what they will do, next 3 years what they will do, and long term what is the performance indicator measurable. The big jargon words are used and intangible things are written. However, in the past year trend is not given in most of the reporting, and the future also where they are going, what targets they have taken is not clearly mentioned. So my question to panel is that how this is going to address, and also it will encompass like many important things like EPR, end producer responsibility, which is missing in terms of companies don't take the responsibility. Even the bottling industry, take it as a water bottling, we can see a next compartment, there is a huge exhibition about big companies, how to make the bottles, but none of is very conscious about how to take that water bottle back. So end producer responsibility is the area which generally is missing in this reporting. So
Sunil,
how it can be addressed?
okay,
Thanks.
Sunil, you would like to?
Okay. Maybe your last point, I will take it as first. See, it is a fact actually. I would appreciate the point which you've done. How do you really extend the producer's responsibility till its final disposition of whatever product or what you're giving it? Because of, see, what is happening in the whole gamut of activities, even today, the latest, the plastic waste management rules, the rules actually talked about the role of government actually to handle that, and the producer has to pay a cess to that. But that is actually not the right approach which has happened. Actually, because what's happening is municipalities have really become failed in terms of managing the, whatever waste or whatever comes into the play. So corporates should have actually been, promoted in terms of actually getting their back or getting the waste disposed of properly. But even without having any promotion on that, I can just give an example which we started in ITC. Again, let me tell you very frankly, it is not as a philanthropy which has started, it has got again a business case. We require something around 150,000 tons of waste paper which is required for our own business. And hardly in India around 12 to 15% is the recovery rate which is there as far as waste paper is concerned. So we need to actually import a huge amount of waste paper, for our own products. So we started an initiative called WOW, which is actually wealth out of waste, which is now prevalent especially in South. The basic reason is the focus was on South, means our plant is actually in South. So we could actually recover to 25,000 tons or to 30,000 tons over a period of 3-4 years. But when we have done that process, we have not only collected waste paper only. We started collecting, focusing on basically the organized sector like corporates, schools, offices. Collect all categories of waste. We developed along with an NGO to segregate the waste in various categories, and the other waste would go to the respective place, and waste paper which comes to that. So such type of models, if we start developing only, the end producer's responsibility coming into there. Even though various reporting tools, which you talked about, the Global Reporting Initiative, or even today, if you look at the business responsibility reporting or NVG guideline, talks about its final disposition till the value chain. But it has got a long way to go because we don't have that much of infrastructure which has developed to that extent that to bring into a sizable value. So, but there are movements which is happening. There are some other organizations also similar lines they started. But I'm not sure about bottling plant how it has happened. So I'm not able to tell you that.
To add one more point to what you said on whether people are, reporting on what they are going to do in terms of sustainability. Like you said, the time frame for a report is typically 1 year. I think the fact is that most of the large organizations, especially the ones who are proactively reporting on sustainability, typically would do that. They have sustainability goals for 2015, for 2020, and how those goals percolate down to each year. And with the help of these analysis benchmarking tools, it's very important to understand that you can continuously monitor your performance on sustainability. It's not just retrospective, you've done it and here's your performance, but what do you need to do to attain your goals in 2015, 2020 is a very conscious decision that organizations are already taking.
This is regarding implementation. Implementation of a tool within an organization. When you already have an ERP system and you want to go there and do the sustainability tool, then the challenges, I know whether you have addressed it or not. I didn't see that being addressed. The challenges are the issue of materiality. For example, that is what he said, coal. Coal for finance and coal for energy manager are different. How the coal is measured, how the coal is defined, etc., are different. And materiality issue is, for finance guy, all that is expensive is material. For example, in a leather industry, if he uses salt, which is a major pollutant, okay, for him it is not material. He leaves it. So the issues of materialities, the issues of definitions, even the issues of boundaries. Okay, for example, product stewardship he mentioned. If I want to be steward in my products, with my products, then I need to watch the complete product life cycle, which my all other business requirements may not require them to be monitored to that extent, to the disposal extent. So I think the implementation has a complete redesign of the previous one. It is not that the other one is there, you just pick up some information from data from here and process, and then report comes out. This is what we heard many times. Oh, everything is there in the organization. It's a matter of collecting information. Okay, I think sustainability...
No, absolutely. I think that's a very, very valid point in the sense, see, typically what happens in most organizations is sustainability in some form or the other as a business process normally exists. They are following practices around sustainability typically. They may not be monitoring, reporting or collecting information around those. What IT allows you to do is bring method to that madness. You have business processes. How do you put those businesses processes into an IT-enabled environment? You're right. If for large organizations which have big ERP implementations, retrofitting something into that particular landscape could at times be challenging. I completely agree with you there. Which is why I think one of the very interesting points that Anupam kept bringing up, and also Mr. Sunil and Femke also echoed that sentiment, that you have to take those baby steps towards embedding this process into your organization. Pick up the low-hanging fruits, which is going to be, for example, energy, right? It's material for your finance head, it is material for a sustainability head, it is material for a plant head, right? So pick up those areas where there is commonality of interest in the organization. Pick up those low-hanging fruits and embed that business process first into the organization. So it's critical to take those baby steps, like you rightly said, towards embedding. And it is a journey. Retrofitting something like this into large existing landscapes at times could be challenging. But then if you're committed to the cause, I think it makes a lot of sense to bring IT, because that mechanism, see, today there are challenges. I mean, the right time to do anything is now, because you have to build you are going to be in business for the next 100 years, 200 years to perpetuity. So the right time to do anything is now. Because once you put that business process into place in your organization, the scalability and flexibility in your organization will grow, which will help you better your business in the years to come.
Can I just add here? See, I just want to add the point here you said. It's absolutely right. Because that is the challenges which we are actually, to face maybe last 2 years, and presently we are come to a certain level. Because the materiality principle where you are applying for an environmental issue is not the same as a finance issue, okay? Because energy may be important for him as well as for me, but when you come to a chemical in the overall cost perspective, it is nothing for him, but that is a really important material issue for me. So that is why a materiality analysis tool has to be separate and embedded, which should be there, which would be different than the financial materiality concept and all. So that should give in that. So total integration of the sustainability management tool along with the existing ERP, I have my own doubt how far it will happen. There would be to great extent to around 80%, 70% of that integration which would happen. I think that is what the Ops Sustain team, they would be trying to work out on that, how to really integrate in that to bring the same platform.
You are it. Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Just briefly wanted to add to that as well, that actually that 80% is already very valuable if you see what is happening currently. I think that's what you have to keep in mind. If you currently have someone actually typing in data, what we still see picking up numbers from the meters and being able to automate that and reduce the number of staff that is involved in it, you would actually already have a large saving. But I also think that a full integration would always be really tough.
Yeah, you wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, thanks. Actually, I have a question for Vishwanath. Many organizations, of course, have SAP implemented, but how many of them, they also have taken the EHS module?
Yeah, I don't have the exact number with me right now, but you typically look at any of the large oil and gas organizations, almost all of them have the EHS.
No, I'm talking about the SMEs. I mean, large organizations.
Even SME. So SME, the whole concept of IT for environment, health and safety is new. Forget SAP, I don't think there is any environment, health and safety management tool right now. But the adoption is increasing, especially in the West, where consumers typically are more aware, customers are more aware about these practices. I have seen the adoption and uptake is very high right now.
Because
in the
I'm
SME.
working in my organization, actually whatever data formats, I'm keeping it in Excel formats.
Okay.
And I want to integrate that with my SAP.
Yeah, can I come in here? Having worked in the IT sector in the past, there are data exchange technologies that are available, and they are pretty much today capable of transferring data formats existing in multiple to one common format, and from there taking it to whichever other formats that are available. So that is again, I think what he pointed out earlier is an integration issue. I think that is a little easier part of the integration from a technology perspective. The tougher part is the defining perspective, which was mentioned, with the term materiality. It is basically that specification level, what you want that SAP or that other ERP to deliver, wherein lies the key to the success after your capital deployment has happened.
Just one more remark. Like yesterday, we had in another session, I had mentioned this again. Since we are talking about tools, I feel responsible care is one big tool in the sustainability gamut. Responsible care.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Responsible care. Like you have EMS, OSHAs, there is a thing called responsible care, and many of the multinational for chemical industry.
Okay.
Mainly for chemical industry. And responsible care, it actually, if you look at the pillars of responsible care, each component of sustainability is addressed. Like, there are what we call as product stewardship. Then we have on safety and EHS and security, and also your supply chain. So all these elements, they are there.
I think that's really good news, for the sustainability domain. What essentially you are telling is that there are choices available, and I think can there be any better?
Note, actually, Indian Chemical Council.
Right.
They have now opened a cell. There's a director level person in Indian Chemical Council, and they are driving now responsible care across the Indian chemical industry. Just a piece of information. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's an interesting piece of information, so that there are choices and there are initiatives centering around the choices. Okay. I just need to find out, do we have the time for further questions, or do we take that offline? Last question. Okay.
I have one question to Mr. Vishwanath. I come from a company, Mahindra Farm Equipment Sector, and it is the first company who implemented SAP in India, 1996 SAP implementer. We could see that good benefits of SAP. However, when it comes to sustainability, I'm finding it difficult to convince my management what are the benefits of SAP implementation. We have a vision of farm tech prosperity, and in future we have implemented this for operations. However, for farm tech prosperity vision, we have to have sustainability at Mahindra Samriddhi centers, where farmers' productivity will be measured, his soil, it need to be customized aligned to our vision. So do you see this kind of customer as a different, or comparing to vis-a-vis somebody who produce kind of other products? So is it makes a difference at your level to come and approach like this, or it is both the same?
Very interesting point. Actually, Mahindra & Mahindra, we have a huge history. SAP as an organization has a huge history with Mahindra & Mahindra, and I think a lot of the different subsidiaries of Mahindra & Mahindra also have adopted the environment, health and safety module. See, the challenge is not in what technology you choose or what product you choose. Challenge is in how do you implement that product in your organization, right? So, yes, all the technologies that are available, specifically SAP, the technologies are extremely flexible for you to adopt to the way you want to use that technology in your organization. So from that perspective, yes, every organization is different, every industry is different, and the way in which you will treat that technology to benefit your organization is different. So for example, like you mentioned, the other initiatives which you want to drive inside your organization, definitely tools are available for you. Why typically organizations choose environment, health and safety tools from SAP? It's because it's an extension of their application landscape. That's the only advantage, the major advantage, that because for example, we have what is known as the Sustainability Executive Advisory Council. So our product development initiatives are driven by customers. So we have an Executive Advisory Council which meets every 3 months, who drive direction of the product. So today they are discussing about what features need to be in the product in 2015, right? So it's product development as a process is something that, you know, is at least 3 years ahead of what is available in the market, right? So yeah, technology is available. It's how you want to adapt it to your business and use it in your organization that becomes more critical.
Okay, so with this we come to the close of the session, and I would thank the audience and I would thank my panel members for an interesting discussion I hope we have had, and hope it adds some value to the sustainability domain.